So, welcome to LinkedIn Live, charting your voyage to success. I'm Steve Morris. I'm a professional EOS implementer, and I love helping business owners build better businesses and build better lives. And so, in this LinkedIn Live series, I'm talking with business owners who've been in the ring, hearing about their stories, what they've learned, and what they would like to do differently. So my guest today is Pamela Stewart. Pamela is the founder and president of Essenza Communications and Coaching in Boulder, Colorado. She's had a 30-year career leading high-performing teams in communications experts to help a variety of brands, particularly in the health and wellness industry. Pamela's also been an active athlete throughout her life and has been very welcoming and supportive of me as we've moved to Boulder and Boulder region. So Pamela, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for inviting me.
Great to have you here. So you've told me a little bit about your past, and it sounds very intriguing, leading high-performing teams in communications and branding. So could you take us through a little bit about, where you started from and forming your business and some of the path that you've been on?
Yeah. Well, I love the line, what a long, strange trip it's been. Because that would definitely be a good summary of my journey. So I did not start out knowing in college that I wanted to start a communications firm. And I went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. A communications degree wasn't really something that was specifically on the curriculum. So I created my own major. And my native language is German. And I grew up speaking German, only German, till I was in school. And then I learned French. So I had this affinity for languages. So I always thought that I would do something with languages, go, work for the UN, Peace Corps, something like that. And so I cobbled together a degree called International Communications. So it was what I thought a communications expert might need to know. Plus, I was taking graduate level German classes and French. During that time, while I was in Chapel Hill, I had internships in 3 different countries. Germany, in southern Germany, and Paris, France, and then in Helsinki, Finland. Wow. So I really, my father, my parents were German immigrants. We traveled to Europe every other year from the time I was a baby as a family until I was in my late teens. And so, being in a foreign country, traveling was something that was just in my blood. And so at the same time, as a foreigner in these countries, you learn how to communicate and connect with people in a different way than you do just with your peer group or in your neighborhood or in your school. So I started to get a sense of kind of what my career might look like. I really had planned to look at the UN as an opportunity, but anyway, best laid plans, right? So after graduating from North Carolina, I did a ski bum winter in Breckenridge. And then my dad was like, I didn't send you to 4 years of college to be a ski bum. So I went home, lived with my parents for the summer, and I got a job. Long story short, I ended up connecting with the professional tennis world. I was a tennis player at Carolina. I did not actually make the team because I got hit by a car the day before tryouts.
What?
Ended up my leg, and it just never. I became a runner, and so I went the endurance sports direction. But tennis was still in my blood, and so I got a job in Palm Springs, California. I was part of the very first organizing committee for what is now the BNP Paribas Open. Wow. So in 1980, it was called the Congolium Classic. So I learned about sponsorships and getting a sponsor and how stressful it was. And my bosses were these legendary tennis players, Charlie Pasquarello and Arthur Ashe and Rod Laver and Tom Gorman. In fact, Tom Gorman was my roommate, my housemate for a while, not roommate, housemate for a while. And so I learned on the ground about organizing an event and doing communications and, really what the stress behind starting a business. These men who were athletes were starting a company for the first time. After a year, I moved to LA, partly for a relationship, but also because I realized that, it wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me in Palm Springs. I mean, the average age was like 70 at the time. So it was a very different world than it is now in the desert. And I got a job as a secretary, and they did call them secretaries back then, at a PR firm, like a listing in the paper. And it was one of the largest PR firms. And that's where I got my start. Again, not really knowing, it just sounded like it would be a fit with, what my interests and education were. I was a good writer. So that's where I started.
Wow. That sounds like quite a journey then. So you went from sort of East Coast to Palm Springs to finally in California there, and just sort of really one step at a time, trying to figure out like, what do I want? Where am I going?
Yeah. So without I have all this hindsight now, which we do. Like I can look back now and go, that's why I made that decision. And that's now I know why it went that way. Whereas at the time, you're just trying to put food on your table. I was in my early 30s. Actually, I wasn't even I was in my 20s. And I worked for this PR firm for a couple of years. They openly said, and I'm not going to name them, but we do not promote secretaries. So after 2 years, I'm like, well, I think I was partially naive, partially, ballsy. I just was like, well, I can do this, make more money. I ended up working for another PR firm and then for an ad agency. And through a bizarre set of circumstances, the PR division of this ad agency was sold to the PR firm that I was originally working for.
No.
That would not promote me.
Oh my
and
God.
I came in as a senior account executive with the only profitable PR account in the batch of accounts. And I got my office with the window, and it was interesting. Let's just say. So, and some of those same people were still there. So the culture was not the kind of culture I wanted to be in long term. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to say anything disparaging. It was a great experience. And when I was 27, I just had this epiphany that, wait a minute, I can do what they're doing. I can find clients. I can write. I can pitch. I know PR. And I don't want to do this commute from the South Bay so I was living in Manhattan Beach to mid Wilshire, which is 20 miles as the crow flies, but in 1981 still took you an hour and a half. So, so I was fortunate enough. I did get married during all this to be able to leave my full-time job and start freelancing PR. And my very first client, I got through a friend who was a photographer, and they were a supplier of chemical surfactants.
All right. Sounds glamorous, right?
Wonderful. Yeah. Not glamorous, but a really, really taught me the nuts and bolts. They remained my client from 1986 until 2006.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that's a record in freelancing. In fact, one of the founders came to my 20 years of, I had a party at 20 years of entrepreneurial bliss, I called it. And he came with his wife to celebrate my being 20 years. The company ended up separating and breaking up when the partners retired. Otherwise, I probably would still be working with them. So things in my personal life started to change. I became a triathlete. I was racing really at a high level, and I bought into a franchise, Fleet Feet franchise. So I was doing freelance PR, writing for a very new magazine called Cooking Light, which had just come out, 1987. I was one of the first writers. I was a partner, half partner in a sports retail franchise, and I was racing at a high level, and I was married. Well, one of those five had to go.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got divorced.
All right.
And
Kept four out of the five stayed. Okay.
Yeah. And I made the decision to leave Southern California. I was like over it. I needed seasons. I grew up on the East Coast. I lived at the beach. It was just like too much Hollywood, too much beach, too much. And so I had visited Boulder one time, and I had a couple of girlfriends who lived here who were both triathletes. And they're like, yeah, come out. It's really cool. So I moved to Boulder in 1992. So this year is 30 years in Boulder. And except for a 9-year stint in Durango, but I always had a home or a place to live in Boulder. I've been a Boulder resident, but I've been a Colorado resident definitely for 30 years.
Wow.
And when I moved to Boulder, I met who would become my second husband. He was in the natural products industry, and I was floundering. Like, I had this PR. I left LA to move to Boulder, Colorado with a freelance PR business, and that was it. So I cobbled together some freelance projects, and through his connections, I ended up launching my very first real PR firm. And that's kind of where that's where it took off. And it was the heyday of the natural products industry in Boulder. It was really, I can look back now, and all of the great brands, White Wave and Cascadian Farm, and we launched Theo Chocolate and Numi Tea, and Blue Diamond Almond Breeze and Blue Diamond Nut Thins, and Blue Sky Soda. Some of the biggest brands. They were not big brands back then. There was the funky little natural foods industry.
Wow. Yeah.
And went to my first natural products Expo West was 1995. And so I found my tribe. Bill, my husband, was in it. We were both in the same industry. He was on the food service side. I was on the comm side. And it was amazing. A huge roller coaster over the last years, with the recession in 2008, and the way that the natural products industry has changed now, mergers, acquisitions,
Whole Foods.
Yeah, Whole Food. Yeah, it is. That's a whole nother story, is how that industry has changed. But we have stayed on the horse. So I rebranded. I was a partner in another PR firm. I started a firm with 3 other women, Fresh Ideas Group. And after a year, the 4 of us realized we did not have the same long-term goals. So 2 of us left and went back to our own businesses. And, it was really, amazing. And then 2008 happened.
Right.
2008 was hard.
Right.
2008 brought me to my knees, financially. The business, a lot of the brands we had were small, emerging brands. and everybody suffered. Luckily, Bill's business in the food service side was still doing well. So, but yeah, I mean, I went from, we had all of the great big brands, financially we were doing really well. I had a team, and over the course of a year, it just kind of everything cratered down to a couple of clients.
So it sounds, when I'm listening to your story and this journey that you've been on and the places that you've gone and you've gone from step to step, I mean, it's sort of, what are you most proud of in all of those things if you sort of look back? And
yeah, I actually was thinking about that this morning. When I worked for the PR firm in LA, when there was very much a senior and low life class system. And you knew which side of the fence you were on.
Okay.
And I said, if I ever had anybody working for me, I would never treat them like that. I would treat them as an equal. So interesting side note, I invented the virtual office. I'm sure I did, because except for the 1 year as part of Fresh Ideas Group, I have never had people everybody has been freelance. Mm-hmm. And it was not well received early on. In fact, Cascadian Farm, which was one of my first big clients, they were the ones who said, we can't really have women working out of their homes doing our PR, and so that's when we started Fresh Ideas Group and opened an office on Pearl Street. Well, who knew, especially when 2020 hit, that it was going to be a thing. Right. It was something that we kept fairly quiet because it was pretty radical. And I have to say that, and this is hats off to all of the women, mostly women and a few men, who have worked with me. And I never say for me, I always say with me. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I've never said, oh, she works for me. Always with, always with, is that I have been so lucky to have an incredible sense of loyalty from these people who basically we have no real obligation to each other. I don't pay them a salary. I don't pay them benefits. They have other clients. And I mean, it's taken some massaging to get to that point. Not everybody's been a good fit. There's been, some revolving door, but nothing. I think back on the people and go, wow, that is really amazing that I've had these incredible, talented people working with me. And it's always felt like we were a unit. And one of the women who works for me right now, she was one of our employees at Fresh Ideas Group. She and I have been working together for 24 years. She lives in Alabama. I won't call her out here, but she is amazing.
Yeah.
And I consider her my partner, even though we are not. I mean, if I got hit by a Twinkie truck tomorrow, as I say, she gets the whole shebang. I should probably tell her that. Yeah. And then I have some other younger women, meaning and also more skilled at the current tactics that people use for communications. I think aside from being blessed with really loyal, talented, amazing, fun, loving coworkers, I've also been really lucky to know what I know and know what I don't know. I am the first one to say I am not an expert in technology at all. I'm a really good writer. I think I'm a really good strategist. I think one of my strongest suits is probably new business development, you look at my roster, I mean, we've had many, many clients and really some high profile clients in the natural products industry mostly. But I am not shy about saying, nope, that's not what I do. This person on my team does that. She's fantastic. And now I see that I have been setting myself up to start to let these talented people, handle more of that. But I am, never pretend to know what I don't know. Sure, we've all loved through well, what do you think about X? Well, it's somehow 20 years of knowing how to spin is a good, comes in handy. But by and large, just being able to say, I don't know that, but let me find out.
So there's something in what you're telling me here that's sort of striking me, that, you've sort of had these ideas, this paradigm about how to run this business that was ahead of its time, really sort of forging, a new path there. You're going through all of this roller coaster of, bring that business up, and then 2008 and things. You've also got this athletic side of you. And of course, there's a huge part of sort of competing in sports is also, frankly, competing in business or persevering in business. So what do you sort of see as like your mindset, like the things that you've really felt have helped you from a sort of an outlook, a mindset perspective that have, really helped you be successful and to be able to, drive your business forward and be here?
Well, again, some naivete, probably. It's never occurred to me that I couldn't do it. Like, I remember going to Hawaii on vacation and watching the Ironman triathlon. Never done a triathlon, never really ridden a bike. I was a runner, never swam, God. And I'm like, this looks fun. And
you did one, right?
2 years later, I did Ironman, and I did 6 back-to-back, 6 Ironman.
Wow. Okay.
It didn't occur to me that I couldn't do it, and this, it's like putting one foot in front of the other. I'm going to get up today. This is what I do. I do my little gratitude mantra every morning, all the things I'm grateful for. My business is absolutely at the top of that list. I've been, I've been through cancer personally. My husband died of ALS 3 years ago. And if my business, aside from friends, my business saved me because I had that structure to go back to every day, that discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to be your own boss. And I've never felt like I actually always thought that working for someone else, like a job, with a salary, one of those things, which I have not had since 1986. I write my paychecks, but not from anyone else, retainer checks from clients, but my own paycheck, not from a company to me with taxes taken out. That has not happened since 1986. It never occurred to me that I would do better working for someone else. Every now and then, like especially 2008, after I came out of the cancer experience in 2013, I was like, man, it would be good to have a paycheck right now. But then I had my accountant sit down and go, okay, so here's what your salary would have to be in order for you to have the same lifestyle you have right now, where you can, attribute certain expenses. I don't want to incriminate myself here in case somebody from the IRS is watching, but the game goes. And I'm like, okay, well, never going to make that in a PR firm. You have this like, oh, a paycheck. Oh, yeah, get your 2 weeks vacation a year. Benefits, yes. Benefits is good, but I don't know. I just always felt like I would sell my soul, sell out doing that. And so now, having come down this road, and I'm now 1986 to 2022, 36 years, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I've held out this long. It would have to be an amazing exit offer. Like, this is your last rodeo and we're going to pay you so much money, you won't be able to say no. Oh, and you get as much time off as you want and you can work at home and you can choose your clients. Okay, well, I could do that for a couple of years, but yeah, that's a little bit of pipe dream.
So I'm hearing this, this perseverance, right? I mean, you've
Yes.
gone through all of these trials and
Yep.
these things that, these obstacles that have beset you in life, and the perseverance. You're talking about the discipline and the accountability. But there's also, like, I loved what you were talking about at the beginning there, with just sort of like going and seeing people competing in an Ironman and just sort of feeling like, well, that looks great. That looks fun, and not thinking like I could never do that, right? So there's some self-confidence there, right? There's some, self-reliance, just to think, well, I can go do that. And, because I think sometimes people tend to look at these sort of challenges in front of them and say, well, I could never do that, right? And, there's sort of that self-talk,
Right.
which people can kind of get themselves in, but it doesn't sound like you had that, right? You've been blessed to be able to have a self-talk track that's like, that looks cool. I'm going to go try that.
Yeah. And, I mean, again, I'm lucky that I found something as a profession that I think that I not only am good at, but I also enjoy. I have a lot of friends who are retired and retiring. I call it the R word. Bill always said, yeah, they ripped that page out of our dictionary. Didn't you know? And I am just starting to get to the point where I'm like, can practice saying, I don't work full time anymore. I'm slow. Being plugged in, I don't know, do you call being plugged in 12 hours a day working? Maybe at some level, but I'm not sitting behind a desk for 8 hours a day like I did, in the old days. So having been able to achieve that life work balance, and it's taken a long time. It's taken a long time. I mean, I would say 5 years ago, wasn't there. 3 years ago, definitely not, after my husband passed away. Then the pandemic hit. I moved Bill and I were living in Durango, moved back to Boulder during the pandemic, starting over, new house again, and then being isolated and all that. But it was like every day I had this commitment, lovely clients, great team. It was something I could count on, I mean, when you fall into something that you really enjoy, it feeds you in a certain way, and it's like a food. It's like you need it, and I feel like I'm still there.
Yes.
I mean, if someone dropped $1 million in my lap and said, "Here, you I don't. Well, $1 million wouldn't do it anymore, but like say $5 million, and say, what would you do differently?" I can't think of anything I would do differently. Not right now. Pay off some debt. There's really nothing else. I love my house. I have a great life.
You've worked hard. You've been able to architect things and structure things.
Yeah. I wish I could say I had a plan. People say, "What's your 5-year plan?" I'm like, I don't know. What's my this week plan? I'm not what I would call your typical business where everything is charted out and I have this roadmap. We create plans for our clients. That's part of what we do. We create strategic plans with objectives and deliverables and measurable goals so that we can justify our existence down the road. But have I ever done that for myself? The main thing is staying healthy now, having been through cancer, watching my husband deteriorate from ALS, like health, number one. So what do I need to do to stay healthy? First of all, be happy. Enjoy getting up in the morning. Enjoy what you do. Enjoy the people you work with. I mean, I've left some situations where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually left that. Or, I've resigned a few clients because it was like, if they're a pain in the, the first day, they're going to be a pain in that same, 6 months down the road. I'm like, oh God, that was a nice fat retainer. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I think I had the foresight. So trusting that what you need to do to be happy, because it is, I mean, they say life is short. No, if you're lucky, it's actually really long. So, like if you're going to be miserable for your life, that's a long miserableness.
Right. So as we're drawing to a close here, I mean, there's a lot of really cool things that you've been saying. And, if you sort of think about what you're talking about now, the perspective that you've got, being happy and looking after your health. And are those the sort of things, if you could go back and talk to your 25-year-old self as she was heading out on this journey,
wow.
What would you say? What would you say?
It's interesting because that is one of those things that in coaching, you probably, and I have with some of my coaching clients looked at, okay, so talk to your 20-year-old self. My 20-year-old self would be like, I don't have time for you. I got too much to do. There are some things I would have tempered on, I mean, stress there's no doubt that cancer is caused by things like stress. And so, and that can be physical stress, emotional stress, you have your body's certain cellular mutation sets you up for cancer. Then it's the environmental factors that come in, the stress, not eating right, environment, all those things. I would say it's a long life. Treat yourself well now.
Mm-hmm.
Mortality, it is a real thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Be happy. Find your bliss. Yes, you need to put food on your table, but there's a way to create a great life for yourself doing what you love to do. Pay attention to the signs. Be kind. Be kind.
Yeah.
Grateful. Be grateful.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Pam. Pamela, I really appreciate, all of the lovely jewels of wisdom and things that you've been coming out with, and, to be able to help, there's a lot of other people starting off their business journey, particularly now there's this big resignation, the great resignation going on.
Yeah. What are these people
doing? People want something better,
Yeah.
and want to find that different life, and you've lived that, right? And so you're the role model. You've paved the path there, and what you've talked about today can be a help to other people thinking about that journey and like, well, what do I need to prioritize and look after? So really appreciate you bringing that to the table.
Well, don't be afraid of uncertainty. It's a character trait. I think some people need that certainty. Like, be uncertain, just don't have this predefined vision of what your life has to look like.
No, I mean, I think if I look back on my life, like nothing, I mean, for all of the sort of forward planning and thinking, it's just, when you look back, the hindsight doesn't always match up with the vision that you had looking forward. The life happens and opportunities come and opportunities go, and you see certain things. And of course, you've talked about all of the unexpected stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Health challenges and other things that you can't control.
We're all on the same roller coaster, Just gotta buckle that seatbelt and put a smile on your face, and
Well, but there's that, right? That's a mindset that you have, and I was listening to somebody talking yesterday about just sort of like, if you view the life as something that happens for you, not to you, right? I mean, it's just a completely different reframing of that whole experience. And then it's like, okay, this is happening for me. I'm putting a smile on my face and I'm diving in and I'm going to do these things. And instead of sort of when you see it happening to you, then that takes away.
Yeah, the victim approach. You can either, you can be the victim or you can own it. You know, and I know, you know, a lot of people in that victim space very intimately. It's like, that is not, I've never been that person. And it is something I think you can be coached into it.
Yeah.
Into being in front of it instead of behind it.
Yes. And looking at the evidence of things that have succeeded in life and to be able to move forward. So, well, this has been awesome. We're at time now, so we will bring this to a close. Pamela,
thank you
for bringing your wisdom and sharing it with the world.
Really hopefully it was useful, and I appreciate your time, Steve. Really. All right. Have a good day.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.